if we do then dive into automation again, the 2x2 here of intra-domain versus cross-domain, technical maturity looking at basic automation like RPA through to more intelligent automation driven by things like AI and ML, etc. And again, the first step being intra-domain basic automation. We think there's a lot of value that telcos can extract by looking at process automation of very manual processes. For example, an example we'll come on to is in the BSS side, where there's a lot of customer tickets and data that needs to be presented. If you can automate that, which could be a very manual task for an individual to do, that could save a lot of time and a lot of operational costs. So there's a lot of value that operators can still do in this intra-domain basic automation piece. And generally, we're looking at simple decisions to action algorithms here. But then kind of opposed to data, where we went into cross-domain first, trying to build that refined common data model before looking into building in intelligence. We think it's slightly flipped for automation. Based on the conversations and the survey that we've had, we actually think there's a lot of value for operators once they've got that refined common data model. And now thinking within a domain, how do we build more intelligence and build more skills and capabilities to use zero touch and to think about how we drive initiatives that will move us towards more autonomous networking. And that may happen within a domain rather than trying to boil the ocean and do this completely end-to-end in the first instance. So then, of course, in the third stage, think about cross-domain automation, end-to-end, more closed loop. So thinking the step here from basic automation of processes within a team or a domain to more advanced automation of processes within a domain, to then thinking, okay, how do I now automate across my network and OSS and IT to create a more automated customer journey? So we spoke to a number of operators that said, look, we're taking a customer-centric approach. We want to understand if a customer wants to buy X service in X way, how do we do that in a very automated spin-up, spin-down model? And that requires automation across network, OSS, IT infrastructure as well. So we see that as kind of towards the end goal here in terms of our process. And again, mapping where we think operators are, we're looking at around kind of 70% or so again towards basic automation and starting just to implement some of those more early stage models around how to automate networks, with some then moving towards more advanced. But again, we're getting less mature here. As said, there's a lot of investment in data and cloud that needs to come first, but lots of quick wins that operators can make in that automation of manual processes to drive OpEx efficiency before trying to push forward with the self-healing, fully autonomous network, for example. So we think there's a lot of good stuff to do in that middle section. But of course, we should start thinking about now innovation within those BUs. So how do we bring in some intelligence to what we're doing so that automation becomes more effective? And I think importantly, you start to build the skills around automation. And that's something we haven't spoken about much yet today. But by looking at how to build intelligence within a team and not just necessarily outsourcing this all to an external vendor, but working very closely with them to accelerate, you'll start to build your own software and automation skills, which will become essential, I think, when it comes to automation further down the line in cross-domain, as well as in API exposure and monetizing APIs successfully. So that building of your own software and automation skills to some extent so that you can self-serve later on. And of course, relying on some partners to help you accelerate that skills building, but not necessarily just outsourcing. And actually, one example that we've got here is Gen AI and customer care. So that's an AI intelligent application and to some extent automation that you could apply within a business unit that leverages, obviously, of course, the data foundation, but also some level of automation within an area. So it may not touch the network, it may not touch the OSS, but within that sales customer care area, looking at how early uses of Gen AI might start to improve outcomes and improve upsell potential. So it doesn't have to be cross-domain, but certainly starting to think about some of that upcoming intelligence and that upcoming capability and how we apply it within a specific area. So that's one example of where operators could start to bring intelligence into their automation journey within a domain.